I won't lie to you guys, I was hesitant to make this video, as although it's a good part 2 to my Captain Underpants and Peanuts video, I had always skipped over the existence of these books. When they came out, I was still very attached to Diary of a Wimpy Kid, iFunny, Big Nate, and my only real connection to Dave Pilkey books was grabbing them off of the Target shelves and going to the Fliporama pages only. That was life-changing to little me that didn't know how animation worked and hadn't discovered flip books yet. But Diary of a Wimpy Kid is forever hellbound to never-ending Disney Plus specials, and Big Nate is... I'm still trying to clear my mind of it. So I felt it was about time to get familiar with Dogman after seeing the absolutely gorgeous trailer bringing back that Captain Underpants movie visual style, paired with Daft Punk's Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger, and I finally ordered and read the first 3 books. Did I feel embarrassed as a young adult reading them? Absolutely not. I was locked into the simple yet action-packed pages. I was on the edge of my seat when Petey was about to crush Dogman. I finished them in 2 hours. I wiped tears off my face questioning how Mr. Krupp didn't get Harold and George publishing agents, and I put them down fully excited to pretend to be an OG fan when seeing it in theaters. And I saw it, and I really liked it. There's some obvious issues I'm gonna get into, but it's such a good rendition of the books that you cannot go back and read them without hearing the voices from the movie. That is the best thing an adaptation can accomplish. That goes to show how well Dreamworks treated this. They nailed throwing in all the little inflections, the silly deliveries, and somehow put the grammar mistakes into the dialogue. This film is gonna alter the way I say seriously from now on.
Seriously?
I'm so thankful we've come out of the 2000s and 2010s era of every comic adaptation needing to be live-action nightmare fuel. Dreamworks has really given other studios the heads up that, hey, we can actually make movies based on comics that actually resemble the style and look visually pleasing and still make money. Reiterating my thoughts on adaptations, a good adaptation to me is a film or TV show that cares less about reminding you about the IP they have acquired and more about giving further value in life to the world it's adapting, taking the small character elements and honing in on them to create a story that gives fans what they want in terms of, oh my god, I remember that from the comic or the novel, but also gives them something new to the already established universe. A bad adaptation to me uses too much time to shoehorn in references and fan service instead of actually building it with the story. I don't want to feel like I'm watching a movie made by a studio that's just checking off boxes of what it thinks will please you.
Is today a Monday? Because it feels an awful lot like a Monday.
But then again, sometimes you can get the complete opposite and it strays too far from its source material in a way that's not even enjoyable. So it's all about finding a balance. Dreamworks keeps showing they know how to take the time to construct adaptations that take life forms of their own and still please fans. The Wild Robot brings you into its world by allowing so many scenes to just breathe. It embraces the quiet atmosphere and aesthetic of the books. I didn't make a full video on The Wild Robot as I kind of have the same praise as literally everybody else on it, but something that really stuck with me was how well it treats side characters. It gives all the animals not only time to shine, but come together to all be conjoined as basically the main character. There's not many movies that can accomplish that, especially adaptations that have so many characters they're trying to introduce to you all at once. I was so impressed with how Fink got slowly morphed into being almost more important to Roz's story than Bright Bill, as it plays on him trying to find a place in the world longing for friendship, and when Bright Bill goes off on his own, we then get a better focus on their friendship kind of filling that void. It's even more impressive considering Fink really isn't that important to the actual books. I'm getting sidetracked. Enough about adaptations, let's get into my actual Dogman thoughts. Right off the bat, this movie is of course so visually fantastic, especially when the color blue is involved. The skies made me drool. I love how this office looks so cozy and yet so cold. The animation goes back and forth from being really smooth and then throws in a few characters with lower frame rates, which I was unsure about at first, but I got used to it and it works surprisingly nice. A lot of the side characters have this puppety clay-like look that stood out in front of the backgrounds perfectly. As for movement, everything moves with a lot of extra weight and felt very satisfying and articulate. Specifically in scenes where Dogman or Petey jump in the air, I cannot wait till this comes to streaming and I can examine all the smear frames because I know they're gonna be crazy. The camera and shot movements are also really insane, especially in the scene as the camera trails behind Officer Knight, driving like the mother from Ponyo. The sound and music paired with this scene gives kind of a Batman TV show vibe, as does a lot of the soundtrack, and it does such a good job making the film feel silly, but still dramatic. In general, there's so many little hidden elements to laugh at, funny self-aware building names, title cards during the news report segment, making meta jokes about the characters on screen. Everything in this world comes to life, and you can feel how much thought was put into it. I really love the little O's floating into the sky when Dogman would howl, and they do this type of thing with text quite a bit, and it's super creative. No surprise here, 10 out of 10 for the animation and visuals. This film takes what I love from the Captain Underpants movie's humor, and that to me is comedy that builds on itself and gives just a little bit more time to let the joke fully reach its punchline and really play on the bizarreness of the world. Do I think this film is a comedy masterpiece or as funny as the Captain Underpants movie? Absolutely not. I don't think Dogman or Petey can top George and Harold and Captain Underpants as characters just in general, but there are just as clever ideas and gags thrown into the ring that makes this movie feel like almost a sequel to it. My favorite joke from Dogman is of course the life is unfair bit. I wish that wasn't spoiled in sneak peeks because it really is the magnum opus of the film's comedy, and I think I would have loved it even more if it was a surprise scene. It's just such a peak example of stretching a joke out perfectly. Mayer could have just said life is unfair and that be it, but no, it went that extra mile.
That's not fair.
Oh, that's not fair? That's not fair! Here, call this number.
Life's not fair.
What?
Life's not fair.
You can actually call that number and hear that voice line, and I love that fact.
Life's not fair.
What?
Life's not fair.
Dreamworks went above and beyond. I wish they did the same with the marketing. There's a few running jokes with some of the side characters I thought were strong, even if they didn't really have much of an impact to the overarching world. I liked Big Jim wishing he had Petey back in jail so he could feel less lonely. Officer Millie just info dumps about her life problems every time she's on screen, and I could not have been more into it, and the voice acting from her.
Like when Anthony fell asleep on his fishing boat and he yells to the doc, "Why did you untie my boat?" And I'm like, me? It's not my fault you can't tie a knot, Captain Stubing.
Petey's former assistant Butler constantly coming into his headquarters to be a smart aleck to him was such a fun back and forth that could have gotten old but didn't. And do not get me started on Chief. I absolutely adored how they handled his switch ups as he goes from rooting for Dogman, being his supporter, to then being absolutely pissed off at him other times. His frustrated screams as Dogman licks all over him while he's trying to explain their duties brought the stored 8-year-old giggles out of me that I had left in the days of watching PBS before school.
Why do you always gotta lick the inside of my mouth?
Like, if you don't take anything out of this film, at the end of the day, there are just some really funny standalone moments that I'm pumped to see in clip compilations for years to come. 7.5 out of 10 for comedy. Dogman's story is very much an episodic series of events like the books. There's not really a set plot other than, of course, the brutal procedure. And the first 20 minutes feels like a sugar rush. It's super chaotic and all over the place. And as soon as the vacuum going into the ocean segment came on, I knew the action scenes were not going to have much of any payoff other than just looking awesome. However, that being said, to defend the movie's pacing, it does seem to be self-aware about its quickness, as there's multiple montages just giving you a general sense of the feud between Dogman and Petey. These montages make a couple jokes about being so quick. It's obvious they were trying to replicate the fast ADHD feel of the comics and Dave Pilkey's writing. I mean, there's literally a robot named ADHD. Dreamworks was making sure the audience knew the caffeine-induced speed of events was on purpose and part of the world, not just bad writing. So yes, it's a blink and you miss it kind of film, but not in a Despicable Me 3 and 4 way. It doesn't outright erase characters or plot points because it's such a breakneck film. The fast elements are actually being used to develop the important characters and the stuff we want to see. There wasn't any moments where I was like, why are we focusing on this? Like I did multiple times watching the Garfield movie. And when we do get slower parts, it's super apparent and more appreciated. However, I won't deny that there is an actual writing issue in the fact that it does get sidetracked a few times, where it kind of cuts storylines in half to focus on another one, not really abandoning them, but awkwardly putting them to the side for a little while. Through the middle act, it feels like it juggles trying to focus either on Lil Petey's story or the Flippy the Fish story, and it doesn't really reach a balance, but it was only a small gripe I had. And when Lil Petey and Pete's storyline is on screen, it was so perfection that I completely ignored that problem. There's a small emotional essence that gets built up throughout the film as Petey reflects on how he was raised poorly and starts to see himself as his dad in the way he's treating Lil Petey. And it gets pretty deep with it and the concept of how someone becomes good or bad. It's not wild robot deep, but it's an added bonus to an already fun film. And then it also perfectly ties into Dogman's small emotional arc as he deals with the feeling of loss of an old life. I really did not expect the film to hone in on the concept of abandonment, and it really didn't have to do that, especially for a film so directed towards a younger audience, but I'm so glad it does. This is what we need children's films to be. Yeah, sure, we'll throw in a scene of a building bending over and farting, but we're also gonna have our main characters mourn losses in their lives and learn how to be positive in a world of negativity. My only issue with the deeper stuff was that it could have gotten its messages across just a tiny bit better and more realistically if Petey's dad, who comes into play, was given a tad bit more screen time. He comes into the story to really give us a picture of why Petey has become a villain and then doesn't really do anything. Just a few more scenes building on how much he's a deadbeat would have really made the generational trauma plot point hit better. But again, they did not have to try that hard at all for a movie that works just fine as a popcorn flick, and I'm glad he had a tiny bit of involvement because without Grandpa, we wouldn't have gotten Lil Petey saying yes after Petey says, "That guy abandoned me. Do you have any idea what that feels like?" What an absolute truth bomb. My mouth dropped when Lil Petey said that. As the film goes deeper in, Petey kind of starts slowly dropping the evil side, but he's so used to it that he feels the need to keep up the act, and I thought that was a clever way of giving him sympathy, but still keeping him the same character. I'm a sucker for the trope of main character getting forced to raise and be annoyed by a child who ends up changing the main character's outlook on life. One of my top 10 cliches. 6 out of 10 for the story and emotion. I was of course surprised Pete Davidson did really well voice acting Petey. I would pay money to hear his sigh of relief getting this role after doing the atrocity that was Marmaduke.
I'm gonna be a champion too.
At first, through trailers, I didn't think he had a silly enough voice to capture the over-the-top Petey energy, nor did I think his voice fit the character design. I pictured more of a Bill Cipher or Zach Galifianakis Joker type of voice, and either it's just Pete Davidson's monotoneness, but it comes off very obvious he's reading a script with most of his voice roles, and I didn't know how he was gonna get past that, especially when given lines like, "I need to stop this super cop," but he actually stole the spotlight in this film, and at the end of the day, I think Pete Davidson's rougher voice added this element of connectability to Petey's character that we wouldn't have gotten with an overly cartoonish villain voice. And I've realized through watching this movie that I should not be a casting director. Dreamworks knew what they were doing casting him. The movie portrays Petey as more of a Doofenshmirtz, still has a soul deep down type villain, and Pete Davidson fit that to a T. This role is to Pete Davidson what Emmett is to Chris Pratt.
You're a cloned cat sitting in a flying mechanical bug. They don't make a car seat for that.
Getting back to my favorite, Lil Petey, yet again Dreamworks has nailed having child characters that have that wholesome, heartwarming personality, but still have super devastating existential lines. I know that's become kind of a cliche now. You got the star in the Lego Movie 2, Luma Lee in the Mario movie, but they do a fantastic job making it just feel part of Lil Petey's personality and the environment he has come into, and not obvious Facebook mom millennial bait. The child voice actor killed it. I can tell he went for a right on the spot, no re-records energy stepping into that recording booth.
No, but it sounds fun. I want to be miserable too.
Dogman as a character is also great. Voice-wise, he gets so much emotion and personality just through the way the voice actor, also known as Peter Hastings, the director, did the barks and howls and all that jazz. It didn't ever get annoying or disconnected me from the character. I've seen quite a few takes that Petey overshadows him and that it's because you can't do much with a non-talking character, but I didn't feel that. I think there's a good equal performance happening, and like I stated, both of their arcs and character growths collide into each other to form the last act. I think the film balanced them as well as it could. Sarah Hadoff is also another highlight of the film as she kind of follows all the stories along, and her reporting is sometimes used as a plot device to get from one scene to another, and I thought that was really smart. The love arc with her and Chief was kind of forced in and predictable, but I'd be lying if I didn't find it cute. Isla Fisher put her whole diaphragm into the role of Sarah. You can really tell how much fun her and everyone working on this film had recording. I did not know she was Beans in Rango and the Tooth Fairy in Rise of the Guardians.
That's why we collect the teeth, Jack. They hold the most important memories of childhood.
Say what you want about him, but Ricky Gervais as Flippy the Fish gives kind of an awkward, unsure of himself performance that really grew on me. It reminded me a lot of Richard Ayoade's voice roles. 8 out of 10 for main characters and voice acting. One thing is for certain, Dreamworks knows how to make fantastic endings. I feel as of recently, a lot of animated films have been great, but fall flat in the conclusion department. The Wild Robot and Dogman are completely different. I have no complaints with how they end. They both conclude so satisfyingly. Spoilers, but I love Dogman using the last souvenir, the ball from his time with Officer Knight, to save Petey as he falls into the volcano. It's a great metaphor for moving on from the past to create a new future. I like the realization Flippy makes about the only reason he's evil is because he feels like he isn't loved, and that was sweet. I also just love the environment and the colors in this whole volcano segment. All around, the film ends with a perfect bow, wrapping with them all being the hero in the story. I teared up a little bit. It teaches kids and everybody about finding hope in the world with human connection. Petey and Dogman share joint custody of Lil Petey, and I could not be more happy with that. Enemies to lovers, yeah. The end credits song Superfly by Young Gravy does not come anywhere near the Captain Underpants Weird Owl theme song, or even A Friend Like You by Andy Grammer that takes me to the summer of 2017 every time I listen to it, but I didn't mind its presence in the actual film. It's not used as some easy jammed in throwaway pop song, it's just a good little ending tune. However, I'm gonna say it to hell and back, I personally think we need to bring back Owl City songs in animated films, and he would have been the perfect choice for Dogman. He's literally Dave Pilkey in music form. So yeah, that concludes my Dogman opinions. This was a shorter kind of random thoughts review rather than a deep dive, as I think it is a film that has to really grow on you, and I probably will have a lot more appreciation with future rewatches. It's a film that I think will gain more niche appreciation over the next few years, as there's still so much more to go back and notice and praise in it. Like all the George and Harold cameos that I did not see first viewing. I'm gonna give Dogman an 8 out of 10. It perfectly joins a fantastic slate of visually pleasing films paying homage to the world and style of what it takes from. I do think this artsy, what people like to call Spider-Verse inspired style does have the potential of getting old, in the same way Pixar's recent cartoonish style is getting, but it's no problem yet, and I will not allow anybody to switch up on it, or we're gonna go back to the overly realistic animated films. Dogman has successfully landed on the list of cozy films I can turn on a boring Saturday night, and that's all I wanted. Again, I definitely agree with most other reviews that this movie is a lot more aimed for a younger audience, but not in terms of a how do you do fellow kids way. It doesn't try super hard to get a laugh out of children like so many other family films tend to do, specifically the new Smurfs film that's coming out.
I think I just smurfed my pants.
There's still quite a bit of nuance to Dogman's comedy. It takes the extra step to be enjoyable beyond its self-awareness of being for kids, and I think most people will have a good time watching it. Before I go, I just want to say a quick shout out to that Bad Guys short before the film. It caught me off guard by how much fun it is, and I think maybe it shouldn't have played before Dogman, because I spent like half my viewing wanting more of the Bad Guys because of how invested it made me in that world again. If Bad Guys 2 is also a banger, I'm gonna start my Dreamworks shrine.